Well, thank you, Dr. Deeds. I appreciate the introduction. It's nice to come back to your alma mater. I'm a big fan of Drury, and I'll talk quite a bit about why that's the case. And I'll also talk to you a little bit about what I think is really exciting about healthcare right now. There's a lot of changes, but we need brain power. We need more people to deliver innovative changes in healthcare. And I suspect I'm looking at some people in this room who may be just crazy enough to try to change healthcare, and we need that. So each of you gathered in this room are about to begin a journey of a lifetime, a journey that will define who you will become. You have the potential of becoming something greater than you imagine. I sat where you sit today, although it was a field at the time, it's been a while, at Drury, and I imagined what I could become. And each of you is a scholar, a leader, a person dedicated to serving others, a person of honor, and a person of character. It's in you. I chose a career in healthcare, and it has been extremely challenging, and it has been immensely rewarding. I'm pleased you may also be contemplating a career in healthcare. We need soldiers. We need disruptive innovators. We need what I call warrior scientists, people dedicated to scholarly advancement of medicine, dedicated to serving others. I have 3 young children, 12, 10, and 8, all born in this millennium, and they stand at the edge of the world's great knowledge of science and medicine. In the centuries preceding them, previously unimaginable advances in medicine have occurred. Still, our medical knowledge remains tenderly immature. The advances my children will witness may exceed the aggregate of all advances of all of medicine and all time preceding them. And that's where each of you stand today, at the very precipice of this change. With the maturation of the Human Genome Project, nanotechnology, and other platforms for innovation, we are at the beginning of the greatest medical renaissance. Yet our current system is characterized by bewildering contradictions. We are the very best, and we are nearly the very worst at the same time. Our system fosters magnificent innovation. There are more patents for pharmaceuticals and medical devices emanating from the United States than the rest of the world combined. In many ways, our healthcare system is a reflection of the proudest elements of our culture. It's innovative, it's entrepreneurial, it's high quality, it's quick, it's accessible to those with moderate wealth, and to a great extent, the world relies upon our engine of innovation to feed the advances necessary to increase the world's collective knowledge of healthcare. Unlike the rest of the Western world, we have invested only marginally in our public health infrastructure. Instead, lean on what we do best. We have relied upon private enterprise and entrepreneurial culture. This culture has created a system that performs exactly as designed, to create, to consume, and to allocate resources based on wealth. In every major city in the United States, there's a medical center that's as good or better than any other in the rest of the world. But often in the very blocks neighboring those great institutions, we have health statistics that compare to third world numbers. The inner city and often urban areas are plagued with tragically high rates of infant mortality, teenage pregnancy, AIDS, asthma, tuberculosis, and unthinkable levels of violence against children in the shadows of these world-leading institutions. And despite spending about 17% of our national wealth on healthcare, roughly twice as much as most European countries, our outcomes aren't acceptable. According to the World Health Organization, we rank 72 in a list of 191 healthy nations. And by the way, that's below Cuba, below El Salvador, below Grenada, below Colombia, and below Iran. Our national experiment has created a patchwork system of care which is troubled and dysfunctional. People, especially children, too often fall between the cracks. They receive the basic care sometimes in most expensive settings, such as emergency rooms. Springfield is a reflection of our national healthcare dilemma. Both Cox and Mercy in Springfield have been recognized various times as top 100 healthcare systems in the nation. I think both of us 7 years in a row. There's only about 3 cities in the United States that have 2 recognized as top 100. They're excellent hospitals, yet our community, our region, and our state is plagued with the same issues of fragmented care, of high uninsurance, and often confounded by terrible lifestyle choices. We often, as a state, we smoke, we overeat, and we do not exercise. Our healthcare system needs change. We need new thinkers, and we need disruptive innovators. Young people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world. And again, I think maybe they could be sitting in this room. 2 years ago, almost to this day, a 52-year-old woman in Modesto, California went an 18-hour operation to restore her ability to speak and breathe on her own. It was one of the most complex transplant surgeries ever performed. An international team of surgeons with 12 physicians, including experts from England and Sweden, were involved in that case. It was led, the transplant team was led by Greg Farwell. He's a world leader in head and neck oncology, microvascular surgery, and skull-based surgery. Greg was a classmate of mine at Drury in 1990, BS degree. Countless Drury graduates have gone to pursue careers in healthcare with a very certain and firm foundation of a Drury liberal arts degree. We have many physicians on our medical staff that are Drury graduates. I anticipate many more in the future. Our past 2 out of 3 presidents of our healthcare system have been Drury graduates, and our clinical and professional staff are buoyed by Drury graduates. I get to see physicians from all sorts of training, and I will tell you, my experience is the training they often miss out on is what a liberal arts foundation gives you, that broader sense of the humanities. Because if you're trained only to be a technician and you're dealing with human service, you've missed out a lot. I find that physicians that we work with who have that broader base become the best clinicians. Well, I believe in Drury, and I'm going to preach a little bit about Drury. There's many Drury students here, and there's many prospective Drury students. I had peers go to all kinds of great universities. They had great experiences. And we'd come back over break and compare our experience. And they'd talk about their first year classes with 100 to 350 students, taught by a TA, their test graded by a computer. And I had experience of 8 to 20 students taught by a PhD and the Socratic method, where we're all very much involved in the dialogue. The liberal arts approach inspired me to have a thirst for learning. I will tell you that what you learn in college may only last a couple of years. The world keeps evolving. But with a liberal arts degree, you can create a foundation for your personal ethics and for your character, and this thirst, this desire for lifelong learning. Because I will assure you that if you go into medicine, what you know today isn't sufficient to be competent tomorrow. It's always evolving. I discovered who I wanted to be at Drury. I had a long history of healthcare in my family, but like many, uncertain of what I wanted to be for sure. And I remember the moment, almost precisely vividly, when I decided that's what I want to do. I sat in Peter Browning's class, who is still a teacher, a faculty member here at Drury, and I had read this book called Tragic Choices, The Allocation of Scarce Resources. And I know that sounds really boring to you. And Dr. Browning, I'm sorry, part of it was a little boring. But there's one element that grabbed me, and I carry it around often in other talks. And this part grabbed my attention and helped me understand why I want to be in healthcare. It says, we cannot know why the world suffers, but we can know how the world decides that suffering shall come to some persons and not to others. While the world permits sufferers to be chosen, something beyond their agony is earned, something even beyond the satisfaction of the world's needs and desires. For it is in the choosing that enduring societies preserve or destroy those values that suffering and necessity expose. In this way, societies are defined, for it is by the values that are foregone, no less, than by those that are preserved at tremendous cost that we know society's character. I was not drawn to be a physician, but I admired physicians. I wanted to make a difference. I had an interest in leadership, but I wanted to lead an organization that had motivations deeper than making widgets, deeper than just merely making a profit. I wanted to make a difference. Healthcare came calling, and I dove in with everything I had. And my experience at Drury became the foundation for my entire career. I have these 3 kids, Annabelle, Charlie, and Madison, and they're still young. All born, in the last 12 years. And I see what they see on TV, and I see what the media kind of tells them about what it's like to be a person and what I think a person of character should be, and I don't often see that on what they're being influenced by. Too often we see people focused on vanity. We too often honor people merely because of celebrity. Can you think of all these celebrities and all they are is merely a celebrity? They've really not done a single thing, not to mention the Kardashians. My parents, and I think reinforced by Drury, told me that heroes don't wear jerseys, they wear uniforms. They wear the uniform of policemen, of soldiers, of nurses and doctors and everyday people who serve with humility. Now, I work in this healthcare system, and I think it's a blessing to work in that industry, especially in an organization that's so rich with people who make these lifelong commitments to scholarship, to leadership, to service, and to character. So imagine a city of about 10,000 people on one square city block. That's what Cox Medical Center is just about. 10,000 people, all with one dedicated focus to care and to help and repair people that have been hurt. We have an active police force. We have supply of power and water. We build things, we clean things, and we fix things. We performed 1.8 million laboratory tests alone last year. We served 2.3 million meals last year. We processed nearly 5 million pounds of laundry last year, and we delivered 3,800 babies last year. We performed 28,000 surgeries and had 147,000 emergency and urgent care visits. When I think of these, I think of some of the most important elements or times of your life. When you have a new child, a new sibling is born, anytime you have to go to the ER, that sense of anxiety and nervousness you have for that loved one, and to think those sort of things happen every day in a healthcare institution. Because the life and death nature of healthcare, any job that may exist inside a hospital, that exists outside of a hospital, is tougher. It's more demanding. If an elevator is broken in an office building, maybe an attorney or accountant is 5 minutes late to a meeting. If an elevator is not working in a hospital, then maybe there's a patient in a cardiac cath lab that needs emergency bypass surgery that's delayed, and that could be life or death. Or if you're just in environmental services cleaning facilities, and you're cleaning a hotel and you don't do a great job, maybe some customer writes a bad score. If you don't clean an intensive care unit well, maybe that post-cardiac surgery patient gets an infection, and maybe the outcome of that infection is they die. Everything is that much more critical in a hospital. It's more stressful. It's physically more demanding. It's intellectually more demanding, yet people keep coming back. Something grabs hold of them and draws them to it. Dr. Viktor Frankl is a neurologist. You may recognize that name. He's a Nazi concentration camp survivor and a physician. And he shared this quote that I can't let go of. It's so powerful to me. Between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. An action and your reaction, there's a very tiny space. But in that space, we have the power to make a response. I'm going to share 3 stories that have happened recently in our organization, and they could happen in any healthcare system. We save lives. We do remarkable things every day. The things most powerful to me are the unexpected, these little common acts of kindness. And if you work in healthcare, no matter what your job is, if you're a heart surgeon or a housekeeper, you have the ability to make a lifelong impact on someone. So I'm going to share 3 quick stories. This one was 2 weeks ago. We have an orientation every Monday for new employees, and we have probably 20 to 40 new employees every Monday. I get a chance to meet them and talk to them. And I ask them, why are you right here, right now? What brought you to healthcare? What brought you to Cox Health in particular? And this one woman, a young girl, stood up and told her story, and she was nervous and kind of shaky. And she said, I lived in Kansas City. My parents were in Springfield, and I came down to visit. And I started having abdominal pain, and it got worse and worse. And my parents were out at the time, so she drove herself in to the hospital. She said by the time she got into the hospital, she opened the door and fell out of the car and couldn't move anymore. She said a physician saw her, was done with his shift for the day, saw her, ran to her, picked her up, carried her into the ER. The ER doc and the surgeons evaluated her and said she had internal bleeding. They told her that had she not got there, she only had probably 3 hours to live. She had surgery, it was successful, and she said, when I woke up from surgery, I said, I'm going to become a nurse, and I'm going to work at this hospital right here. And now 3 years later, she was in orientation. So in our orientation, we have stories like this, and it brings a lot of people to tears because it's so powerful, the reasons people get into healthcare. I'm telling you, if your motivation in healthcare is because you're going to make a lot of money, you will suffer through a career you will not enjoy. If your motivations run deeper than that because you want to make a difference, it will be the joy of your life to work in healthcare. I'm going to tell another story. This happened last Thanksgiving. I was in our cafeteria. You have to work 24 hours a day to keep a hospital open. As a matter of fact, we've been open since 1908, since Thanksgiving Day. We've not closed down for a week, a day, an hour, or a single second. Continuously open. That's what healthcare is. So on Thanksgiving Day, we offer our employees a Thanksgiving turkey dinner. So I was in just to help to serve, and we serve in our cafeteria where our patients and family come to. And I was in the back, and I saw this interaction. A young boy who I would guess is probably 12 or 13 years old, with a little girl that I would guess was his sister, that was probably 7 or 8 years old, and they were all by themselves on Thanksgiving evening, and there's something going on that there's a little boy and a little girl by themselves on Thanksgiving evening. And the little boy asked, how much for the turkey dinner? And the cafeteria worker, told him how much, and he whispered to his little sister and said, well, how much for just a piece of turkey? And she got 2 plates, and she put turkey on both plates, and she put mashed potatoes on both plates, and she put stuffing, and then put green beans and put a roll, and gave it to him, and then she ran around and paid their bill for him. A cafeteria worker in our cafeteria starting salary is $7.50. She did this out of her heart. It's not a policy. As a matter of fact, I don't want people to have to do that because we don't want you to have to pay people's bills. You never make a living doing that. I imagine there may be a day sometime when I'm in orientation and some little boy comes up and says, I started here because that happened to me. When he was feeling most vulnerable, someone offered a little bitty act of kindness. And in healthcare, you have that chance every day, whether you're a brain surgeon, a heart surgeon, or working for $7.50 in a cafeteria. The last story I'm going to tell, we call it the Lion King story, and it happened almost about a year ago now. We had a 22-year-old patient, a beautiful young lady who was suffering from cervical cancer, and her prognosis was not good. A nurse's aide came into the room and asked if she could do anything, and she said, no, I'm fine. And she overheard her talk to her family saying she wanted to see the movie Lion King. Lion King was being reintroduced in 3D that next Friday. And this nurse assistant heard that, and she could have just taken that and gone, and she took her temperature and did all the things a nurse's aide did, but she thought, maybe I can make this happen. So she talked to her nurse manager. She said, well, that movie starts Friday, and we'd have to get her released temporarily. We'll have to have physician's orders because she's in a lot of pain. She's got, imagine patients with all the tubes and all the oxygen. So they got a hospice nurse worker involved. They called the doctor. The doctor said, okay, here's what we can do. I think we can make it happen. They got it all lined up. They talked to our general counsel and asked, okay, legally, how can we get her out of the hospital temporarily to make this happen? It was all worked out. But by the end of the day, her prognosis and her circumstance got worse, and she couldn't travel. So you think, well, they gave it a good effort, and and you're proud that they did that because it really has nothing to do with medical care for cervical cancer, but it has everything to do with the humanity of caring for someone. So it was all over. That night, and I got to see this happen too. I was at a reception, and our general counsel, her name's Charity Elmer, and she's a Drury graduate, by the way. She was talking to Larry Lipscomb, who was chair of our board, who, by the way, is a Drury graduate. Neat combination. And he said, how was your day? She said, typical kind of stuff. And she said, but this one thing, we're trying to help this patient, and it just didn't work out. They wanted to see the movie Lion King. Next to Larry was my wife, who's not a Drury alum, so and he said, she said, well, Larry, you know, Tom Whitlock can get that movie. And he says, you're right. Tom Whitlock is an Academy Award recipient. And if you won an Academy Award, they want you to get access to any movie because you get to vote next year. So he has access to any movie there has. Tom Whitlock, Drury graduate, right? Neat combination here. Larry takes his phone at that very moment and calls Tom, and within 48 hours, that movie is delivered to Cox South from Disney Studios in Southern California. That was on a Thursday. The movie was going to be released that Friday. We had it before it was even going to be released. Meanwhile, someone in the community heard about it, and they brought over a 6-foot plasma screen, 3D screen, and they set it up in the lounge area on that floor. Our food service staff heard about it, and they made popcorn, and they got the red and white containers. This family gathered around with their 3D glasses and watched the movie Lion King. That's a no policy to do this. There is no medical book that will say you should do this to make a patient better. But the family got a chance to gather around. If you've seen Lion King, you know it's about the circle of life. And so you can kind of imagine why that movie could be so powerful for someone at that stage in her life. So the family gathered around, and within the week, that young woman passed away. But one of the last messages she had is that people cared about her in ways beyond imaginable, as far away as Disney Studio, which probably broke all sorts of laws and sing that to us, copyright laws, and we broke them probably by displaying the movie. And the good thing is that we have another Drury grad who's an attorney who can help us out if we go to jail. So in that moment between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. In each of these stories I described, there was a moment when someone came to the cafeteria worker and didn't have enough money. There was a space. She chose to fill it by giving him a full belly. There was a moment when the girl just fell out of her car, and that doctor decided to rush over and carry her to the ER. He could have called for help. He could have done something differently, but he did that. That heroic gesture put her into action to have a career dedicated to healthcare. Talk about pay it forward, a 30, 40-year career of caring for people because of that action. So these people, they work at this place at 24 hours a day. They work through Christmas. They work through Thanksgiving and Easter, birthdays, soccer games, and Super Bowls. The work is hard, as I said. It's demanding physically, intellectually, emotionally, and yet they keep coming back. In this space, we cannot choose to be perfect, but we can choose to strive to be better. We can choose between anger and love, violence and peace, cynicism and hope. You can choose to give up or never give in. Between stimulus and response, there's just that moment, but in that moment, we define our character. We choose to lead or follow. We choose to serve or be served. We choose to live in honor. We choose to be people of character. Your time will come when under the fire of circumstance, you'll have that moment, you'll have that choice, a choice that will define you. Will you stand up when others will not? Will you help when others look away? Will you speak for those that cannot? Will you forgive those that cannot forgive? Will you lead? Will you serve? This year is a passing of Steve Jobs, and I talked about we need innovative, disruptive change in healthcare, and maybe it's just the crazy ones in this room who will do that. So the last message I want to do is just deliver essentially a commercial that Steve Jobs wrote himself in 1997. I'll just quote it verbatim. Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. I thank you for this opportunity to speak to you today. I can't tell you how lucky I am in hindsight that I chose Drury College. The friends, the colleagues, the enduring relationships with friends and faculty here make a difference. And I will tell you, if you're interested in the healthcare professions, This university will launch your careers in ways that many cannot. I can't stress how important it is in a world so scientific and so technical that your scientific background has a base of humanities. You will call upon it again and again in your career. That's the end of my formal talk, and I know there's a lot of interest in what's going on in healthcare right now, and I've got a few minutes, and I think the class, we've got time for everyone for any questions you might have.